Hello, everyone. It's that time again. I am Captain Logan, and welcome back to the Captain Logan Show. Joining me, as always, is our chat moderator and producer, Danny Nixon. Hello, Danny.
Hey, everybody.
Danny will be compiling your questions throughout the show. So already, right now, if there's something that you want to ask me for today's topic, feel free to go ahead and do that. This week, we're doing... Danny, I can't believe we're back again already. I feel like we just did this.
Yeah, I know. The weeks go by fast when there's something in the middle of each week. Like, it seems like there's the Wednesday, Thursday and Friday kind of go, weekend, and then boom, it's right back into Wednesday.
That was really profound, Danny. Yeah,
it was.
No, I agree with you. But anyway, so last week we did a new show and a general Q&A. This week we're going to do a superhero rewind Q&A. I'm not going to lead with news. We're just going to talk about old superhero movies for the first 45 to 50 minutes, and then if there's anything news-wise or otherwise that people want to ask at the end, we'll do some of those in the last 10 to 15 minutes. But I want to keep the show primarily today kind of a loose superhero rewind Q&A. So the idea is the superhero rewind rules. I'm obviously not analyzing a particular film today, and I'm not going to be doing full reviews of anything, because it's not like Danny always have all these things in my head, all the time. It gets hard to remember everything. But anything you guys want to ask me about superhero movies or the show, we can talk about Superhero Rewind itself. I noticed some questions about that as well in the live comments. But today I'm going to talk about movies that superhero movies that came out at least 2 years ago, just like we do on Superhero Rewind. I thought that might be kind of fun. So that's what we're going to do today. Danny, yesterday I announced the I just like to say Danny before everything, because you're here, because we're both yeah. So Danny, guess what? You already know this because you made the thumbnail for it. But yesterday,
yeah, but I did those with my eyes closed, remember?
Oh yeah, that's yeah, yes, but you're still aware of the fact that you did them. It's not like somebody else made them, and or that you don't, or I don't know, maybe you have amnesia. Maybe you're like Al Simmons making thumbnails. I don't know. But anyway, so so yesterday, excuse me, I posted an announcement for the Geekvolution Creative Writing Workshop, which is starting at the end of next month. And I've talked about that on this show, kind of loosely, unofficially announced that we're doing that. The official announcement was yesterday. And guys, we already have enough takers on that, enough people who have signed up to fill up an entire Google Plus call, which is crazy. So we already have 9. And about half of them have already signed up on Patreon. And so everybody seems really serious. People are really excited about it. I've got people going both tracks. I've got some people that are doing the beginner track. They're going to take assignments from me. I've got other people who already have things that they want to bring in and workshop short stories and novels and things. And I should mention, because people were asking me about this yesterday, that I mentioned that I'll take movie scripts, that'll take screenplays. I'll also do comic scripts. And again, you might not get as much feedback from the whole group that way, because I don't know if I can get everybody to read everything, and we can't do that stuff out loud as easily. But if you want to come in with comic scripts, I'm totally cool with reading that stuff and giving you some feedback as well. But anyway, a lot of interest in that, and if the interest continues, if I get several more people in right away, I'll probably try to split it up into 2 groups, two sessions. So we'll see. I'm not going to be able to do any more than that. So 18 will be the absolute cutoff. And what I'll do is, if we don't get too many more right now, then we'll just do the best we can. And then when folks come out, because people won't do this forever, I'm sure. This is going to be an ongoing thing that monthly I'll be doing continuously. But if we have folks that jump out and do it for a while and then leave, then those will essentially be slots that are open. And then I'll open it up again and bring more people in. So I'll have to cut it off here after a while, but I am really stoked by the interest. It's fantastic. So I think it's going to be It's gonna be really fun and really interesting, and I'm just stoked to get my feet back in the creative writing workshopping mode. So anyway, just wanted to talk about that a little bit briefly. Danny, why don't we just go ahead and jump right into it? Superhero Rewind Q&A. That's what we're doing today. And Danny, why don't you throw me the first one, man? Oh, also, real quick, I should mention that the super chat, of course, is there and open. And if you want to make sure that your question is seen, you can donate $1 or $5 or whatever you want to do. And we sure appreciate your support. Go ahead, Danny.
Okay. The first question from Noah O. Cap, which Superhero Rewind episode are you most proud of?
I think I answered this like a week or two ago. It's I don't know. It's a tie with several. I always throw RoboCop in there just because that was a thing that when I first watched it, I was like, I have no idea what I'm going to say about this. And then I started writing, and I just ran away with myself, and that was a lot of fun to analyze, and I really enjoyed the satire of that. And Watchmen is in there, although I wouldn't do it the same way as I did before. Dark Knight Rises is in there. That was one that I was really dreading and ended up being a lot more fun to write about than I thought it would. And actually, Danny, I don't know if I've told you about this. I did because I'm a crazy person. I did Dark Knight Rises and Man of Steel back to back. What a terrible idea, right? Oh, and people asked me about it too. They were like, Cap, are you mad? You're going to go from Rises directly to Man of Steel? And I was like, no, don't worry about it. I kind of know my feelings on Man of Steel. That's not going to be that hard to write about. I had a completely different experience with it. And that one broke my brain in a way Rises didn't. And it was rough. I'm happy with how that one turned out also. It just was a pretty grueling experience, honestly. But, oh, you know what? Another one is Howard the Duck, partly just because the pizza rant was so much fun to write. But yeah, and then early on, the early days when Rewind was a thing I could kind of do in an afternoon, it's Power Rangers, and what else? I don't know, X2 was a big one early on. But yeah, those are a few that I really enjoyed writing about. Underdog also was a lot of fun to do. And I don't know, a lot of the bad ones, right? The Ninja Turtles coming out of their shells tour, because I overanalyzed the crap out of that. That was a half an hour too long, I think. But but no, I had a lot of fun with that. But anyway.
Well, switching it up.
Yeah.
From Blue Dragon 5, Cap, which rewind do you currently dread doing the most?
It's BVS. No doubt. I mean, I have the same thing with BVS, sort of, that I did with Rises. I mean, Rises was a really polarizing thing that was just kind of, that I thought was going to be hard to write about because I knew people, loved that movie, and that I was going to kind of disappoint people, but I don't want to pull my punches just because my opinion doesn't line up with other people. BVS, I guess I kind of have that a little bit, although there's like the really loud, outspoken minority that really likes that movie still, but I don't think it's polarizing the same way Rises was. I think the majority of people still don't really think that worked, even if it's to varying degrees. But that's just it's a brain-breaking kind of thing, because I want to take it on its own terms, and I want to not just come in and immediately be like, well, I know this is the worst thing ever, and so that's how I'm going to approach it. That's never what I do. I always give it as fair of a shake as I can, regardless as much as possible. Obviously, we're only human, of initial bias and what I already think of the thing. But it's going to be long, right? There's a lot in that movie, and it wants to be a really serious, changing hearts and minds kind of thing. And I got to talk about what it's actually doing versus what it thinks it's doing, and what it's like forcing down your throat as far as what it claims it's saying, but then what it actually maybe seems to really be saying. And then there's the whole thing of the things characters are doing versus the things that they're saying that they're doing, because you have the music videos scenes where people are dying, but then by Batman's hand, but then people are talking about it like that's not happening, because Alfred's like, oh, you're branding people, and that's really extreme. And I'm like, not based on what I just saw 5 minutes ago, but okay, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that one's gonna be tough. I'm currently working on the first season of Daredevil, which is hard for other reasons, partly just because it's really long, and it's taking me a while to take notes on it, because I'm doing my note taking process the way I always do, and it sometimes takes me 3 or 4 hours to watch a 2-hour movie when I'm taking notes for Rewind, because I pause a lot and I'm thinking things through, and I'm sometimes writing out ideas for things I think I might want to talk about and stuff, and I'm doing the same thing with Daredevil, so it's just taking forever, and so things like that are tougher for different reasons. So I was also kind of dreading that, but partly because I don't feel qualified to even talk about it because it's so brilliant. But anyway, so yeah, no, it's definitely BVS, but hopefully it'll be kind of fun to talk about.
Yeah, you could almost do entire rewinds on just each scene of BVS, because it seems like every scene you could do its own analysis, like for 30 minutes on just that scene and what it's supposed to mean. And then when you do it as the whole movie, it would just, I can't imagine having to do that. That'll probably be what, your 2.5 hour rewind? It's
likely to be one of, if not the longest. I've had people that have said, well, Cap, if Daredevil's not the longest thing you've ever written, I'm going to be really disappointed. Because, it's a 13-hour movie, essentially, and it's very dense, and there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of interesting thematic and character stuff to dissect and talk about. And, ideas of justice and vengeance and stuff that we've talked about before, but are really fleshed out and made fresh and new again in that show. And I'm like, somebody left me that comment at one point where they sounded almost like upset if I didn't do that. It was like, it better be the longest thing. And I was like, well, it probably will, but I'm not going to force it, but it probably will. BVS is likely to be the longest thing I've ever read. I'll be really surprised if it's not.
You should do an extended cut of the rewind.
That's a great idea. That would be really funny. I have actually had a couple of rewinds that I could do that with, where I wrote material that I ended up cutting. And I've done this at least once with Patreon. Chronicle, I had a whole 1.5-page opening that I wrote and then started writing. I do this sometimes where I write to get started. I have to write for a while before the thing actually really gets started. And I wrote like 1.5, 2 pages before I was like, okay, no, this is where the review starts, and the rest of this is extraneous and doesn't need to be there. It was fine. I thought I said some interesting things, but it didn't need to be in the review, so I cut it, and then I put it on Patreon, and I was like, here's the deleted opening of Chronicle. So I have done this before. And I think Dark Knight Rises had something like that too, but I didn't actually keep it. But that could happen with BVS, most certainly.
Yeah, I remember back when one of the Patreon goals was you'd send out like a package that would have different rewind scripts.
Yeah,
I got one. I think it was for the Wolverine that had some extra stuff in there that just didn't make the recording. Game Station 3 has a super chat and says, "Is the review of the first Ant-Man coming soon?" That hasn't hit the 2-year mark, has it? Or has it?
No, it has. I mean, we just had the sequel.
I thought it came out 1.5 years ago.
No, no. It's definitely at the 2-year mark, and in fact, that was the goal for that was the next Patreon goal. That was the $600 goal. So
that's right.
We did hit that, and that will be coming soon. It is, I think, 1 or 2 after Daredevil. I may have another. No, I've got to do the top 50 performances video first, because that was the goal before that, and then Ant-Man. And then I have another requested review. I'm getting behind on these because Daredevil's taking some time to do. So everybody bear with me. And also, I've got a baby coming soon, so I'm really hoping to get Daredevil finished before that happens. But Sarah's delivery date is 2.5 weeks from now. Yeah, only 2.5 weeks from now. And she is looking like she might deliver at any moment. We really think she's going to be early this time. So everybody bear with me. I've got a lot going on. Game Station 3 also has a $5 super chat.
Why don't you just start writing the BVS review and get it out of the way?
Because I have other things to do, and because I don't want to do that yet. I mean, like just all cards on the table. I'm really dreading it. Like I don't really want to do that yet. That's gonna be a major project. I mean, like when you say get it out of the way, like part of it is I have other things in the queue right now. I've got a couple of requested reviews. I've got some goal reviews. I've got some stuff that was requested with the Rewind selection board. So I also have some other things I've got to do before I get to that. But BVS is requested so much. Of course, I'm going to make that a Patreon goal. And people keep asking, like, is it going to be the next Patreon goal? And I'm like, but I don't want to do it yet. So, guys, I waited, what, 5 years for Rices? 4 years, 4.5. I mean, I really dreaded that. I really waited a long time on it. So I don't know. I just don't want to promise it's going to be this year or necessarily even next year, but people are begging for it. So I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, what else, Danny?
From Kellen O'Rourke.
Yeah.
Will you ever consider revisiting Spider-Man from 2002?
Yes, certainly. So some of those early movies, those early reviews are things that I get requests to re-review quite a bit. I had a requested review for X-Men, which I did, and so I took a review that I originally did in like 6.5 minutes, Danny, and it became a 43-minute review. And I did a similar thing when I went back to Superman Doomsday, because that was the first video, and if you go back and listen to that, hardly a rewind. And so I want to do it with a number of things eventually, and these are also things that I might make Patreon goals, or I might make things that people can vote on for the Rewind selection board. Come to think of it, I think X-Men was a Rewind selection board thing. 89, people keep asking me about, which is funny because I've said so much about that movie. What more do I have to say except that not everybody watches all the videos. So there are people that only watch Rewind that haven't heard my kind of revised feelings on that movie, and more things I have to say, because it's again a really short review, so obviously I can extrapolate a lot, and there's mistakes I made there, and then Ninja Turtles is a big one, yeah, so definitely at least the first two Spider-Mans I would consider going back to. The third one I've said my piece on, and is right around when Rewind started to become more in-depth analysis than overview. So once at the 15-20 minute mark, I don't really feel the need to go back to it, but it's mostly the like 8-9 minute ones that I would probably return to. So anyway, so far we're just talking about the show, but any questions people have about specific movies and stuff, I'm happy to answer you. I hope this is interesting to anybody. Go ahead, Danny.
Chewbacca's Lover. Which unproduced script do you think is the most rewind worthy?
That's a great question. Yeah. The one that I have most considered doing in that format is Superman Lives. And what I originally thought of doing was doing a rewind where I talked about that and the documentary at the same time. And I talked to Eric about this, and he was like, okay, but the problem is if they had made Superman Lives, it would have been a majorly revised script, and it wouldn't be exactly the one that we have from Kevin Smith. And I haven't watched that documentary. I keep meaning to. I just haven't gotten to it. When it came out, it was really expensive, even just to stream. So I was kind of waiting for it to go down. I was really excited about that and really wanted to watch it, but I didn't want to $20 rent it. I didn't want to watch it that bad. So I will get to that eventually. But according to Eric, anyway, they make it really clear in that documentary that movie would have been a very different thing from what that script is. So it would be weird to talk about them at the same time. So I don't know if I would do it that way, but I still might. It's actually on the short list right now, Superman Lives. And I don't know I don't know if I'm going to take it off or not, but I really kind of want to do that. So that's the big one. But beyond that, I don't know. I don't know if I would do a straight up rewind on the first draft 89 script, but if I will probably talk about that a little bit again if I ever do another rewind on 89. Danny, can you think of any produced scripts that are really, worth sinking your teeth into, like analytically like that?
I haven't read a whole lot of unmade scripts for anything.
Sure. I've only just started, really.
Yeah, the ones that come to mind are the Sam Hamm Batman 89 just because that would be an interesting one, but you've already done that really in-depth discussion of it on the Omnibus. Was it the Batman special?
It was, yeah. That was, or was it? Was that the Batman Christmas special, or was it a different show? I don't even remember now.
I can't remember either. Go back through all the Omnibus to find the one about the unproduced Sam Hamm Batman '89 script. But
it's also published as a separate video, so
no, you have to watch.
You can't just go find that
the video.
Yeah, people I think are really happy that I'm not posting it like that anymore. Or at least I'm not getting complaints about it. That's worked out really well. It's certainly faster for me.
Yeah, I can't really think of any scripts that off the top of my head.
The Green Arrow Supermax thing I've heard things about, but I've never actually read. So yeah, I'd have to go do some digging. But it's cool that you brought that up, because that's a thing that I have seriously thought about actually doing now, because I don't have to worry about pictures anymore since it's a glorified podcast. So, I mean, there's pros and cons to this. Obviously, I miss there being a visual component, but for years I wanted to do an unmade script or two, and I was like, but what do I put on screen? Like I can't show you a visual aid, and I'm not using a visual aid anymore, so I can totally get away with it.
Ethan Packy has a super chat. He says, if Hawkeye was in Winter Soldier, could a Black Widow solo/origin movie spin out of it with Pierce mentoring a young Hawkeye and taking the Winter Soldier from his Russian handlers? Thoughts?
Sure. So if Hawkeye had been in, so we're like rewriting history, right? So if Hawkeye had been in Winter Soldier, I like the way this is worded. If Hawkeye was in Winter Soldier, could a Black Widow solo origin movie spin out of it with Pierce mentoring a young Hawkeye? And sorry, I'm just reading the question again. And taking a Winter Soldier. Yes, sure. I mean, that's not a horrible idea for a movie. If you did a Black Widow movie, I don't think I would want it to be origin. Because we've spent so much time with that character, and that's a thing a lot of us would really like to see. I don't know about you, Danny. I don't think I would want to go backwards, and it would feel like. And I'm not saying I don't want to go backwards for anything, because period pieces can be really cool, and it was nice that we did that with Captain America, and I'm excited about that with Captain Marvel. But we haven't already been introduced to her, and these have traditionally been origin pictures for characters that we haven't seen before. But a character that we've spent this much time with, it would feel like we were going back to origin just because that's what we've always done, and like we're trapped by it. And I wouldn't like that. It would be, I think, a lot cooler if we kind of explored her relationship with Hawkeye in present day, I think.
Yeah, a Hawkeye Black Widow buddy cop movie would be kind of fun.
Yeah.
I don't think either of them really had the name recognition to sell a movie by themselves, but then again, we're in an era where just being a Marvel movie sells itself. So maybe my opinion is completely outdated by like 5 years.
Ant-Man shouldn't sell, and it does. Once you have that, once Ant-Man's making the kind of money it is, and obviously that's the least grossing of those franchises, I think, but they know that, so they don't throw too much money at it, and they're doing really well for how much money they're spending on them. Once you have that, like, are we really worried that a Hawkeye movie wouldn't sell? I think that it's just as marketable as Ant-Man. I think Black Widow is more marketable than Ant-Man.
Yeah, I said that thinking through it. I'm completely wrong about it. You could definitely sell that movie just as well.
No, you were channeling yourself. You were channeling the Danny Nixon from 2012. That's what was going on.
But I still want to see the buddy cop movie, because we don't really get a lot of time fleshing out their interactions in the Avengers movies. I mean, we do have them interact, but I want to see more of that interaction, more so than I personally would want to see a solo with either of them. So
yeah, and also I guess with your concept there, Ethan, I also don't know why Hawkeye would need to be in Winter Soldier in the first place for that spinoff to make sense.
I guess it may just be trying to keep connected threads tighter, I guess.
Sure, but like you could, I think that whole idea still could work regardless of who exactly was in Winter Soldier. I mean, it's an origin like flashback thing, and the only thing that would have made me excited about that is getting Pierce back. Like that would have been cool, I suppose. And I certainly could have been won over by it, but I think I would much prefer a movie that is not an origin film. But thanks a bunch for the super chat, Ethan. We appreciate it, man.
The next question from MattBoy52.
Yeah.
Would you ever consider doing a rewind on the old Batman and Robin film serials from the 1940s?
Yeah, certainly. That was, and part of the reason I've waited on those in particular is just because a buddy of ours, why can't I'm sorry, I'm blanking on things right now. Who reviews the reviewers? Why can't I think of things? Anyway, we've got a friend of the channel who did those at one time, and they were really, really good, and they were really funny. And I don't know how badly Lance, Mr. Fusion. I don't know. I've kind of hesitated going in and doing that just because his reviews of those are so good. But I don't generally do that. I don't generally say, well, somebody else has a great review, so I'm never gonna do it. It's just kind of the reason I put it off. But yeah, at some point that could end up happening. Doing serials in my format would be really interesting, and I think an odd thing to try to do. But also, I hadn't done long form stuff until recently. So, I mean, I was doing top 10 lists of things, but I wasn't doing an analysis of a story that's that long. And now that I'm doing some TV seasons, I might eventually do that. But if I do too much TV or too much long form like that, we're not going to get more than 4 or 5 rewinds a year. They just take so long to make. So, like, I know I got the Power Ranger one done in a week, but I did nothing else that week. And I've got a lot of projects and things going on right now. So I guess I'm using this to springboard off and say people have been trying to request TV shows and stuff for Rewind, and I'm doing Daredevil because that's the thing I always really wanted to do. I will do more down the line, but I want to get some movies knocked out before I do the next one. Or at least before I do the next, thing that people are requesting. More Power Rangers could end up having. That's easier for some reason, and it's just a thing that I kind of want to do a little bit more of at some point. But I don't know how long it's going to be before I do more of that because I need to get some movies knocked out. So anyway,
the next question from Daniel Davis. Hey Cap, thoughts on de-aging actors with CGI? The process, I think, has improved. They've done a great job in the Ant-Man films, for example. Michael Douglas looks like he walked out of a film from the 80s.
I mean, I agree with that to a point. I think Douglas looked better than the de-aging that we used at the beginning of Guardians 2 with Ego. But a lot of it kind of just depends on how close a person looks now to what they did back then, regardless of lines in their face, right? The difficulty is weight and build and stuff. And I'm curious to see how that's going to affect Sam Jackson with, and now we're talking about new things and recent things and things in the future. But Danny, I don't know if you saw the news, but it was revealed a day or two ago that they're going to do that with Sam Jackson for the entirety of Captain Marvel.
As in CGing his face and everything?
Yeah, the de-aging thing. I mean, he's all over that movie. They're going to do it for the entire film, which is really interesting. And I don't think his build is that different from what it was like 20 years ago. But for some people like Douglas, he's a little bigger. And I don't mean like he's put on a ton of weight or anything. I'm just saying that like the build's different. He doesn't look like he did back then. So there's nothing they can do about that. They're not like shrinking or growing people or anything like they did with. I'm not even saying they should do that, but like they did with Captain America in First Avenger. But that's the one thing that kind of takes me out with stuff like that, where it's like, well, I realize that this is that we're de-aging a character before we're de-aging an actor, but I know what that actor looked like 20 or 30 years ago, and so it just takes me out a little bit, but it's better than. I mean, it's nice that we don't have to recast everybody now. So like, I like that we're doing it. It sometimes looks better than other times, but I'm very curious to see what it looks like for an entire movie with Sam Jackson.
Yeah, that's kind of got me worried because. Granted, he doesn't look all that different than what he looked like around the time of Pulp Fiction, so maybe it shouldn't be too hard to make him look younger. I would have thought most of that could have been done with makeup and look pretty well. Give him a wig, give him whatever facial hair you're going to give him for it and cover up. Maybe
Yeah, you're right. The first thing you do is give him hair.
Yeah. I'd like to see him look like Jules from Pulp Fiction, personally, just as a nice little Easter egg, since we've already done the one in Winter Soldier. But that's just, fan service.
Yeah, and it's interesting that I was going to say, I guess it's kind of interesting that they've told us about it already. I might have waited on that and just shown it in a trailer and see and see what people say and if anybody notices.
Yeah.
And they're de-aging Coulson, according to David Crabtree. But that one I don't think they even necessarily needed to do. I'm with you. I would just do a little bit of makeup with that. But I mean, like, yeah, you're talking like late 20s probably versus more middle-aged. But like, I kind of get why they're doing it with Sam Jackson, because he's what, 70 or pushing 70.
I have no idea if he's that old, honestly. He doesn't look it if he is.
Yeah, he's that old.
Wow. Michael McAllister asks, is there a superhero rewind where your thoughts are very different now? I guess we kind of covered that earlier slightly with the question of revisiting certain topics.
A little bit, yeah. So I go back and forth a little bit with the Ninja Turtles thing. I made a big point when I did that all those years ago, that the Ninja Turtles names are in the title, so they should beat the bad guy at the end. I think that's overly simplified. My opinion on that is more complex now. Let me think. I mean, I think the extremes haven't changed that much. Like, movies that I really, really disliked when I did a rewind, I really dislike now, and movies that I love, I still pretty much love. So there's nuances here and there, things that maybe I didn't think of until later. I've talked about that with Watchmen, but more of it is stuff I didn't catch before. It's stuff where I just like completely disagree with my analysis. But the thing is, I've said this before, I sometimes feel like I don't totally know what I think about a thing until I've written about it, or at least talked it out with somebody quite a bit, but especially until I've written about it. So I'd almost like need to go back and give it that exact treatment again before I could answer that question. So obviously my feelings evolve a lot on stuff, but when it's older and I've lived with it, I tend to have less of that dramatic evolution than I do, say, right after I see a brand new movie and then I see it again and then I see it a third time. So like just more casually watching a thing and having first impressions versus living with a thing and taking a lot of notes and writing about it and spending several hours thinking it and noodling it and like writing down ideas that you then go, nah, actually, I don't agree with what I just wrote. And then you change that entire sentence. That's a thing you can't do off the cuff. And so a lot of that kind of soul searching and stuff happens as I'm through the process, as I'm doing it in the first place. And so it maybe doesn't change as much. I also should mention that because of what I do and watching so much stuff for review, I don't revisit movies as much as I used to. This is a thing I've talked about some. And so, I would need to keep watching a movie for my thoughts and opinions to change on it that much, except for just, having conversations casually where somebody brings up something I hadn't thought of and then that affects it and I start thinking about things differently. That, of course, happens. But like, I don't go back to movies like I used to with Batman Begins, where I've watched it, probably 20 times. There's not probably the movie, the recent superhero movie that I've seen the most times, maybe Days of Future Past. That is a movie that I love so much I have just turned on for the sake of watching it, but I don't do that as often as I used to. Danny, I have a few things that, I usually buy superhero movies as soon as they come out, and a lot of them I could have waited on until they got cheaper because I don't end up revisiting them for a long time. We have movie nights at the house, so sometimes I see more things because of that, but like Wonder Woman I've not watched again. I bought it right when it came out. Black Panther I've not watched again, and I was stoked to see it again. Like, I bought that when it came out, thought I was going to come home and watch it, had other things to do, still haven't watched it. So
I still have Homecoming in the packaging and everything. And normally I buy everything just so I can watch the special features when I get it, because that's why I buy the Blu-rays more for the special features than for the movies. And even lately, I haven't even been going back and watching those. So I'm kind of in the same boat as you. It's like I'll buy movies just to put it in my collection and then not watch it for at least a year or two. And I'm bad about that. And I could wait and get it for like $8 at Walmart compared to 25.
The only other time that I've watched Homecoming was doing the commentary with Dan. So I did that. But anyway, well, what else do we have, Danny? We got another 25 minutes or so.
From J-Man.
Yeah.
Hey, Cap. Ever thought about doing a rewind on Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark if you can? I've seen it on Broadway and it's delightfully weird.
Yes, absolutely. If I could get my hands on it, I would love to do that. Yeah. I've always been really curious about it.
And I haven't heard much about it. I might have seen like pictures from the play, but I've never really looked all that much into it.
Kellen O'Rourke, I want to address this, asked if anyone still buys physical media. I feel like, I mean, obviously I do because I collect stuff. So, it's different. Like, I understand people that have kind of changed their tack on this and don't feel the need to, purchase physical media because it's more convenient to just stream things or just have things on hard drives or whatever. But, I don't think we're to a place, Danny, where it still makes sense, at least to me, to not have anything on physical media because I don't think the streaming services are reliable enough to know that you're always going to be able to get your hands on a thing, and I don't want to spend $3 or $4 every time I want to watch something to rent it on Amazon. And even if I was, buying like digital copies of things, I don't. When I said on a hard drive, I guess people don't do that. I guess people just buy digital on like Amazon or something, and then it's in their Amazon account. I know I'm a broken record on this, and I've said this for years. I'm still not comfortable with that. Like, I still don't feel like I own it, and like there could come a day where those files are gone and I can't get to them again. I mean, I realize that Amazon is a really huge company that probably is like never going to go under, but they could change how they do things, and you could just end up with not having your files. And so whenever I have things physically, there's pros and cons. You can lose stuff can get scratched up, stuff can get broken, but I own it. It's physical. I have the thing. I don't feel like it's just in the ether somewhere. And so I'm more comfortable with that. That's part of why I do that.
I'm with you. I've bought maybe 2 movies through Vudu, which is the movies on demand thing where when you get a digital code with your physical media, you can get the movie digitally for free through that. You can also buy them that way. I've done that with like the Daredevil director's cut because I couldn't get a physical copy at the time.
Yeah.
And I wanted to watch it right then. I didn't want to wait 3 days for it to get shipped. So it's like one of the few things I bought, but I don't really trust, like, what was it? Flickster that just went out of business completely or got merged into something else.
Wow.
And you can't use that streaming service. So I always buy the physical copy, even if I only intend to take the digital code from it and watch it digitally instead of putting it in my Blu-ray player. But until the price of buying the digital version of it is not $20, I'm not going to buy a digital copy when I can spend the same amount for the physical copy. It just, I feel like I'm getting a better deal because usually I'll get at least the Blu-ray and the digital code, or I'll get like the Blu-ray and a DVD. So I've got 2 copies of it, even if they're not the same quality. It just feels like I'm getting a better deal.
You also don't always get special features that way.
Exactly. And I wish these like Vudu and all these other places were bundling the special features in with the digital copy if you're paying full price. I get not doing that when you rent it, but when you buy it, you should get the same content.
And I have this with, real quick, I have this with video games too, where it's like, and that is stuff that you download directly to your console. Something happens to that console, I don't have that anymore. And like, yeah, for most accounts with Nintendo or PlayStation, whatever we're talking about, you can go back in and download anything that you've bought before if you had to like rebuy your system or whatever, or replace a hard drive. But you don't know how long you're going to have support for certain systems. Whereas if I have it on a physical disc, and then I have to rebuy a system, I still have that disc. I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. Super chat from Jeffrey Patron.
Yeah, several super chats. Thanks, guys.
Off the cuff, what do you find to be the most disposable / forgettable superhero film of the last decade?
Oh no, I forgot. It was really forgettable. It didn't stick with me, Jeffrey. So I can't remember it. No, Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows is definitely up there.
Out of the Shadows into Darkness.
Right. Ninja Turtles. Green Lantern would probably be that way if it wasn't so infamous. If DC hadn't hedged their bet so hard on that movie. But that's a thing that I've consistently said is like the Green Lantern movie I would have expected somebody to make 10 years before that. So it should be kind of throwaway. It's just it's infamous, so it's not. I feel kind of that way about Fan Four Stick also. It's forgettable before it's the worst thing ever, but it's infamous. So we tend to remember and remember it and think about it that way. Danny, what do you think? What would you say is like a real forgettable superhero movie?
I would say Green Lantern if it wasn't for the fact that we've had now 2 Deadpool movies. I almost did the Daredevil thing that you do, that are making fun of it. I think if that hadn't happened and Ryan Reynolds wasn't still in the superhero genre acting, people would have forgotten about that one. But Fan Four Stick, yeah, that, and I think, well, Rise of the Silver Surfer isn't technically in this last decade, but I think
that's the thing. No, there's
more forgettable ones.
Yeah, Ghost Rider. I mean, a lot of the mid 2000s ones are that way, and so I'm trying to think of things that are like those. Right. What would you say is the most forgettable of the MCU movies? Because I'm going to go with Dark World.
That's what I was saying. Like, I haven't watched it still. I watched pretty much everything up
only
till
for
now.
Marvel Mania. The only, yeah.
That and Ragnarok are the only ones I haven't seen except for Ant-Man and the Wasp, which I haven't gotten a chance to see. I don't feel like I've missed anything at all in the grand scheme of the MCU. Like, I feel like I would be missing if I hadn't seen some of the Guardians movies or obviously an Avengers movie. But Thor just kind of... people like Thor. I don't want to come off like I'm hating Thor. I just don't really care that much about him to go out and see his movies. Even now that they're on Netflix, I still haven't seen Ragnarok. I just don't care to go see it. Yeah, so I guess it's boring. Disposable.
It's very disposable. A lot of people are weighing in on in the comments. J-Man says Iron Man 2 is that way. Jeffrey says Dark World, then maybe Ant-Man. I see what you're saying that. I can probably get behind that. Incredible Hulk for me, even though I think that's a more interesting story than Ant-Man. Some of that's just personal preference thing. I really enjoy Ant-Man. I just don't think it's a great memorable story or anything. And then Cinematographic says both Iron Man sequels. A lot of people don't like 3. And then I think there are also, Danny, let me take this on. Superhero movies that the public consciousness has this with that I don't. I think for the mainstream, especially because of Logan, the Wolverine is like this. I really like the Wolverine. I don't think anybody goes back to that movie.
I don't, and one of the things
I say anybody. That's hyperbolic. I don't think a lot of people go back to that movie, especially just for lack of a better word, lay people that aren't already huge into Wolverine comics or whatever.
Yeah, I think before the Logan movie came out, people would have looked at it as like, well, yeah, it's the best we're going to get with Wolverine with the constraints of PG-13. It's Fox. It's all this stuff, and people looked at it a little bit more fondly. But now that we've got Logan, I don't think anybody cares about it anymore. At least on a I don't think anyone looks at it like this is my Wolverine when they've got Logan that they can go to as this is my Wolverine.
Well, and I was going to make the case, the statement J-Man is making, although not as strongly. He says Wolverine has an awful Act 3. Yeah, it's somewhat of a rough third act, and that has to do with that too. It looks more typical by the end than it actually is on the whole. So anyway, but I also think that the Amazing movies are going to be like this. Obviously,
they're so disposable. I completely forgot about them. So maybe that's a good point. The Vampire Diaries has a super chat and says, "When can we expect a Suicide Squad commentary?"
We should get on that. I don't have immediate plans for it, but that is a thing we should do at some point. So, hopefully in the not too distant future. My wife still hasn't seen that movie and is still curious about it. And I'm like, I don't think you're going to like it, but we can watch it if you really want to. But yeah, so let me say hopefully this year. But I mean, I'm not promising anything, but yeah, that should happen. That's one of those movies that I don't immediately have anybody to go to that would be like super excited to do that movie. So like if Eric and I did it, it might feel at least to Eric kind of obligatory and academic. But I'll find somebody that wants to talk about that movie. It might be me and Eric.
I would love to rant about Suicide Squad. I don't know if I want to sit through a
I might try to get Danny to do it. I'll keep bothering Danny until he sits down and does it with me.
It would. If anyone wants to see me rant about something, I'm sure I could rant about that one.
I mean, yeah, me too. I still want to know what's going on with that airplane, or with that helicopter. I will never understand that. They get shot down. They're walking onto the ground. I don't know what shot them down. No one talks about it.
I assume it's supposed to be one of the zombified special forces people that we see after they're on the ground. But what weapons would they have on ground that they could shoot it down with?
They would be firing wildly. They're zombies. They're not gonna I don't think they would be that accurate, right? But even if that's what it is, this is where you have characters that aren't acting like people, and the movie kind of loses its perspective entirely. How do you get shot down in a helicopter, leave the helicopter, and no one says, gee, wonder what caused that? Like, even if you can make guesses and kind of figure out, like, well, this is what it must have been, why aren't our characters talking about it? They don't know about the zombies yet.
No, that whole movie just doesn't.
That is my favorite thing to complain about with Suicide Squad.
Time Lord Master 108. If you're stuck in a room and the only way to get out is to watch either Batman and Robin or Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, which would you choose?
It's kind of tough because I enjoy those both to some degree for their badness. I don't know. It depends on what mood I'm in, honestly. Probably Batman and Robin, just because I think it's maybe a smidge shorter.
That's my pick, just because it's fun to hear all the ice puns.
Yeah,
that's such a superficial reason to choose it, but I love.
No, certainly, but I legitimately enjoy Nuclear Man. I think it's really funny, and I like I like the bad effects in that movie, and I like how completely over the top comic book Lex has gotten at that point where he's cloning himself, and yeah, I don't know. That's a tough choice. That's a fun question. I like that. Also, I have some nostalgia for Superman 4 because it's the first movie I saw in the movie theater. And I barely remember it, but my dad tells that story a lot, and so I have a kind of a special place for Superman 4, even though it's dreadful. But yeah.
Yeah, the first movie I really remember seeing in theaters was Spider-Man 2, so I've got a pretty good movie to go back to as my first theater experience. Well, as far as superhero stuff goes.
I'm sorry, what was it? What was the first one?
Spider-Man 2.
Oh, okay, sure, yeah. So you got to see a good movie in the theater.
Yeah. Blake Preston asks, what is your favorite extended superhero cut?
Extended. And I guess you can lump that in with just any director's cuts that put more stuff back in, right? Like
I would assume so.
Can we lump all of that back in? At one time I would have said Daredevil, and of course I have historical perspective, but looking at the new show has made it difficult to want to go back to that movie. But just relative to what it was, it is maybe the most improved. Can we say that? Yeah. But yeah, beyond that, throw some out, Danny. I'm just not thinking this. I mean, BVS obviously has one. Days of Future Past has the Rogue cut, which is interesting, but not the cut they should have put in the theater.
Would you count the Donner cut as an extended cut, even though it's
kind of different before it's extended? I don't know if that movie's actually much longer than the Lester cut. But yeah, no, that's tough. I'm not sure.
Daredevil would be my go-to because that's the one I've seen the most, and that's one of the first films I ever remember getting a director's cut for.
No, DJ's got it. It's definitely Watchmen.
Oh, yeah.
I just didn't think of that because in my mind, the ultimate cut is the cut of that movie that exists. It's a no-brainer for me. It's like that they finally put the entirety of that movie out, and then what's the point of going back and like with that? It feels less like, and I mean like that's a straight up extended cut in the notion it is a director's thing, and the ultimate cut is the director's cut with a couple scenes put back in and Black Freighter, but it's. But I guess that's a straight up extended thing because it's not different. It's longer. They put stuff back in it. But that feels like, the theatrical version and even the director's cut feel like TV edits to me. So I just forget all about them. So yeah, no, he's right. That's what it is.
Thank you, DJ, once again.
Yeah, thanks, buddy. No, that's the only answer. It's the only possible answer.
The Wolverine, 1987.
Yeah.
Since Ronan is going to be in Captain Marvel, hadn't heard that. Do you think he could retroactively become a more compelling character?
That's fascinating. Yeah, sure. But if we make him much more interesting, he might feel like a different character. So it'll be interesting to see if they can line that up such that it feels like the same character from that movie, but just with more screen time and more development, and doesn't make you go, well, how come we couldn't have had this in Guardians? I don't know. He was going to be in that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I hope I didn't spoil that for anyone who was trying to not know anything going into Captain Marvel.
Man, I walked that line so hard. Like I kind of wish I didn't know that, but
sorry for everyone who didn't want to know that. I had a question that looked interesting, and at first I thought it was Ronan talking about the Hawkeye type of thing.
Yeah, that's where I thought we were going.
From Hamza, I'm sorry, Hamza, I'm not going to try to pronounce your
I always
just
say his first name. I don't want to butcher his last name. Yeah.
Cap, do you think they'll cancel the Netflix shows and give them movies?
No,
I don't think so either. I think it's cheaper for them to do the 13 episodes than it is to do a movie, isn't it?
Well, even maybe, but even disregarding that, they've had a straight up PG-13 policy with the movies. They're not going to suddenly start making rated R movies or water those down so they can be PG-13. I mean, they've separated them off into totally separate, corners of the universe that hardly speak to each other and sometimes don't even feel like they really live in the same space. Even if we start crossing them and make it feel like more like one living and breathing universe, that will never happen.
Yeah, we could maybe see a Netflix movie, kind of like what they tried to do with Defenders, where it's shorter. It's still a series, but it's shorter.
Yeah, that'd be great. Like or even just a straight up movie for Netflix. No, I could see that. That's actually, I never thought of that. That's a great idea.
I don't know if they want to cross the waters as far as doing movies on Netflix and then get people's expectations. Well, Marvel's just going to do movies on Netflix now, but they might do that with the
but in that pocket, I don't think that would feel like cross pollination. If you made like a Daredevil movie or a team up movie, like if Defenders had been just a 2-3 hour thing instead of a series, I think that would have worked, and I actually think that might have worked better. And frankly, they hardly had more than 2.5-3 hours of story in Defenders, besides just some subplot stuff that easily could have been cut. Boy, I never thought of that. Maybe Defenders should have been a movie. I never thought of
that. From how poorly I've heard people talk about Defenders, I was kind of hoping it would just... I wish it had just been a movie so I could watch 2 hours of it and not have to at some point go and watch the full... mini-series or whatever that would be.
Well, and there's some great stuff in that show. It just doesn't come together, and the writing is really inconsistent. Had it been shorter and tighter, it may not have had some of those problems. Because it felt stretched, even for 8 episodes. It felt kind of forced and stretched.
I think that's just the growing pains we're going to go through with streaming, where when we first started putting shows on streaming, it was taking the mindset of what would a 23-episode show be like if we condensed it down to 13. And now everyone's looking at these as, well, what would we do in 13 episodes? So they're trying to take a story that may fit into 13 episodes and stretch it more to where it feels like this could have been done with 8 or less or fewer.
Folks, if you want to ask me anything about like geeky news and stuff that's happening right now, or anything else unrelated to the topic at hand today, now is the time. Danny's going to keep going with the list that he has, but we'll try to answer at least 2 or 3 other kinds of things too by the end of the show. We'll go for about another 10 more minutes. Danny, go ahead, buddy.
Okay. From William Parcell, what is your favorite superhero costume out of the superhero films from the last few years, and why?
Wow, that's tough. Let me do some thinking. Wonder Woman's is great.
Yeah. I think the strongest part of the DCEU is the costumes.
Do you?
Yeah.
And casting sometimes.
Yeah, but I think the casting's kind of been wasted. At least on screen, the costumes all look great. I think
I mean,
Batman.
I like Aquaman's too, and I didn't think I would, but on screen, it's great.
Yeah, I think the BVS Batman suit is the best bat suit we have ever gotten in any
Do
kind of
you
live
really?
action.
I'm not with you on that, but I like it. I'm not against it. It's not my favorite. I mean, it is very comic book, and I like how Arkham-y it is in action. But it still doesn't beat out 89 for me, at least just in the looks department.
If they made the neck a little bit thinner, which they did in Justice League, it would be perfect for me. I love
Sure.
that suit so much.
Mhm.
I
Just admit it. You also like it better with the stupid goggles, right? That's your favorite part.
Oh God, I hate that. He looks like a knockoff Night Owl.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a knockoff Night Owl, and Night Owl is a knockoff Batman. It makes no sense.
No, I think Wonder Woman's is wonderfully faithful to the comics, is very iconic. That felt like so much with that movie, like it was handled like Richard Donner Superman. That is probably my answer until I get off and I start thinking, oh wait, no, there's these other things that are just as impressive or better. What would you say is your favorite costume out of it MCU?
Spider-Man and Homecoming.
Yeah,
even though it's not traditional Spider-Man,
I was thinking that
cool.
too. Yeah, I like it a lot. But yeah, I'm sure other things will come to me and I'll be like, no, that's just as great.
I like Deadpool's just for the fact that we did some expression with the eyes and we're trying to push the envelope.
I'm glad you said that. No, Deadpool is a close second.
Mr. Roboto with another super chat says thoughts on Steve Ditko's death. I'm glad this is coming up.
Yeah, it's really sad.
Topic.
Certainly. Yeah, he was 90. I mean, I'm glad he lived a good long life. We don't know a whole lot about what he was doing for the last several years of his life because he was so private. I should at some point go back and see if there's anything he published, smaller and underground that you can get your hands on, because I know he was still working on stuff. He just was working, I think, he was just working for himself. If you've never seen the documentary Searching for Steve Ditko, it's amazing. Check that out. It's really cool. And Neil Gaiman and the guy who made that movie, actually, at the end of that movie, spoiler alert, go and talk to Steve Ditko, but you don't get to see it because he was really private and didn't want to do interviews. And there are very few recordings of his voice even anywhere. But yeah, obviously, really sad, big loss. I don't really know what else to say about it, but
yeah, it's a big loss for the industry. If he was private for his own, because he wanted to be, and not because he got pushed out, which I don't think any of that ever happened. As far as like not wanting to, if he was private on his own because he wanted to be, more so than like the Bill Finger situation of just no one gave him the credit he was due, which obviously Steve Ditko has gotten the credit he's due. I would feel, at least to a certain extent. I'm glad he lived his life the way he wanted to, but it's always going to be it's always sad when someone so important to the comic industry dies. So
well, and that's the thing I hesitated saying is I don't want to sound like I'm judging the man or condemning him for the interviews he wouldn't do and the information he wouldn't give us. I think, is it fair to say it's sad that wealth of talent and information that he chose never to fully tap for the public is gone? Yes. Like I think that's a fair thing to say, but I'm also, not going to judge the man for his, wanting his privacy.
Yeah. I've seen a few people online who, after his death, posted handwritten notes he had sent to people, like who had written him fan mail that he would write back to.
Oh, interesting. Wow, cool.
If he was still doing that up until very recently, if he was 90, that's impressive and amazing and shows a real dedication to the people who are comic book fans. And because I would think if I'm pushing 90, I wouldn't want to write to anybody. Maybe that's just me, because I know I'd be an old, grumpy man. But if he was doing that, that speaks, I think, really highly of him, that he thought so much of the people who appreciated his work.
See, I want to think if I make it that long, when I'm a really old man, that my attitude will just be like, aren't I cool? I made it this long, like.
Yeah, if I reached 90, I would consider that a success, and I
want to think. I imagine myself just being obnoxious, going around and bragging about how I'm still alive. Like that's what I imagine. Like, yeah, look at me. I'm not. And you have the stigma where people act like you're not relevant anymore, or you're senile or whatever. And I'd be like what? I've done way more than you have. I'm 90 years old. Like,
You should get really obnoxious with it and count down, having a timer of like, I'm 90 years old, this many months, this many days, this many hours, this many minutes, this many seconds, and just keep the ticker going and just be obnoxious about it as possible.
You just wear a t-shirt with a countdown clock.
And by that time, I'm sure we'll have LED shirts that can change the design on a whim, so you can just have the ticker going constantly. I had a question and I lost it. I am so sorry to that person whose question I just lost. Let me see.
Blame Danny. It's Danny's fault, man.
It is my fault. So just.
Except we'll never know. There'll be like 15 people that like that could have been me. Like
it probably could have, because the question
changed the course of history.
Oh, here it is. I found it. Rabbit Ears blogs. What are your thoughts on Colossus being in Deadpool?
And we dodged that bullet.
Barely.
Yeah. So what? Just the fact that we used him and changed him and like unabashedly and all of that, is that like I'm assuming that's what we're talking about.
There wasn't actually anything more to the question, unless he added something and I skipped over it in a later comment. But I'm assuming
I liked the audacity of that, of just basically sort of looking like you're in mainstream modern X-Men continuity and saying kind of like, screw the rest of continuity because they don't care and it's hard to match up with that at all. So let's just do our own thing and then have Deadpool kind of comment on it. Like the fact that it's self-aware about it is why it works. Or although I say that, if it weren't, I mean, the fact that it's Deadpool, you would expect it to be self-aware about it. If it wasn't, and it was just basically a separate continuity that didn't have any illusions about it being in the same universe, that's acceptable to me too. And that's basically what Logan did, you know, where like it counts certain things from the early X-Men movies, but by and large kind of feels like just its own thing. And the story's so good, I don't care. Like, I'm going to try when I finally do a rewind on that. I'm also dreading that because that's another thing that I don't feel qualified to talk about. But Logan is one of those movies where, like I did with Days of Future Past, I could go on and on about continuity things and how odd and confusing it is. I'm going to try not to do too much of that with that, because it kind of gets away with it. You know, it's one of those, sort of like we're doing with Halloween or something, right? Where it's like you keep the first movie or two in continuity and then you sort of forget everything else that happens after that. That's basically what Logan did, except the only things that it really keeps up with what we had before are like the look and feel of that world vaguely. That's about it. That's kind of fun. I wish we had maybe added another major character or more major or on the upper end of minor X-Men character in 2. Because like, you know, we did Juggernaut and that's fun, but I kind of wish we'd gotten like another X-Men. And maybe like another character that we had done in the past, but we completely reinvented. That would have been fun. So anyway, that's my answer there. Oh, J-Man wants to know if I'm also dreading the inevitable Arkham Knight rewind. Yeah, I mean, that's going to be a hard thing to analyze, but Danny has turned off his microphone because his dog...
my dog was barking in the background. I wanted to give him a chance to stop before it, filled up the entire last bit of this show.
No, that's all right. You want to do one more?
Sure. From The Wanderer, Cap, where do you think the line is drawn between wanting a piece of media to be made for you and gatekeeping?
Gatekeeping.
It's a term that's kind of sprung up lately of kind of the whole "you're not a real fan" argument of you're not a real fan of this unless this, and this type of thing.
Wow, boy, that's an almost a somewhat loaded question for our last question of the day. That's right. That's man. Wish I had Eric here. That sounds like a good After Dark kind of question. So let me start with this. I always start at a place of I want to take a piece on its own terms, and I kind of look at this from two different perspectives. So there's what I want for a franchise and what I wish we were doing with it moving forward, and then there's taking the thing on its own terms and saying, okay, is it effective at what it's doing, and was what it's doing worthwhile as a piece? Once again, taking the Logan example, it would be really nice if the X-Men movies could actually all fit into a continuity. That movie is so good, I just don't even care that it's not that it's not doing that at that point. That it has the audacity to kind of run off with itself. And so things can win me over. Really, at the end of the day, I just want to be won over with whatever it is you're doing. It's kind of that simple. I don't know, man. I'm not real interested in the gatekeeping idea. What do you think, Danny?
I get really annoyed by the gatekeeping type of stuff where, like, I get it as a comic book fan. There's always the things I want to see in the movies, but I really, really, really despise the attitude that some people take of you're not a real fan if you don't pull from this, and this. It's not a real Superman story if it's not this, or this. It's not a real Batman if it's not this, or this. Like, I get it having an argument against, well, Batman's killing. That's completely against the core of what my interpretation of Batman is. I don't think it works here.
Yeah, sure. Superman needs certain values or he's not Superman. And I don't. Exactly. But am I being a super fan or a raging fanboy if I say, I'm just asking the question, if I say that the DCEU version of Superman that we've had thus far doesn't really encapsulate the core values of what Superman traditionally has been, and so it barely counts as really being Superman, is that, like, does that make me a raging fanboy, or is it just that, like, that's what Superman, like, I don't feel like I have to have read a million Superman comics to say that. I feel like there's a lot of people that don't know Superman that well, that like, you know, his core values because he's a major American icon, you know, like the I don't know, just some dude on the street could say the very same thing. Does that make him a gatekeeper? I don't know.
Well, I think with the Superman example, considering in the DCEU they have tried to make us think that he was that retroactively, like the Justice League. Yeah. I think that's a completely fair argument for just that universe itself in the context of it. I don't really think it's gatekeeping to say, I want Superman to be this, or this.
Well, you're right. It would be different if it would be a little different if they made him something else entirely and owned it and said, like, here's why we're doing this, or like, we feel like this is relevant or useful in some way. But you're right, like, they also kind of insulted people's intelligence by pretending like it was something else, or by pretending like it was actually real Superman. Now, that's somewhat disingenuous to say, because part of the thing that made that happen with this particular example with Justice League was Joss Whedon trying to course correct. Yeah. So it's not fair. I don't think to say that, like, Joss Whedon was trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. He was just trying to get us there so we could forget about what happened in the past and move on. But I think even BVS and even Suicide Squad pretended like Superman had those values, because he dies and then and then, like, everybody is inspired by him for some reason.
Well, they even have the line from Batman of how I failed him in life, I won't fail him in death. That never came up in the movie anywhere in any of the cuts. The only thing Batman had promised Superman was to save Martha. He saved Martha. He didn't fail him in life. So they keep trying to pretend that it's this idea that Superman to the public represented truth, justice, and the American way. And nowhere in any of the movies did they ever make us think that. In fact, in the same movie, they made us feel it was the opposite, where the public explicitly did not trust Superman. They did not see him as truth, justice, and the American way, traditional Superman.
I kind of think, we'll get to that super chat in a second, and we were about to end, but then this question came up. I also think we have to be really careful about what we label as gatekeeping. I think there's a big difference between looking at an ongoing continuity and saying, this doesn't fit with what you gave us already, and I'm confused, and it feels like you're cheating, which is how I feel with Star Wars. I'll just get it out there. That's how I feel about Last Jedi. There's a difference between saying that and saying that a movie like that is bad because it doesn't do whatever in your head is like perfect consummate Star Wars. Like I think that asking for consistency or asking for like threads to continue and pay off that were promised, especially when you're talking about an ongoing story, I don't think that's gatekeeping. And I think some people have labeled that as gatekeeping.
Yeah, I think for me, the line between gatekeeping and complaining about how a certain franchise is handling certain characters is when you start to take the gatekeeping to the fans. Like blaming them or saying you're not a real fan of this because you like this version and not. If you're complaining about how Star Wars or Marvel or DC handle a certain character, I think that's fine. You're allowed to criticize whatever you want. I think when you start criticizing,
Sorry. The single best super chat we've ever had.
I just saw it.
Yes, Michael McAllister, I'll address this fight. Arby's does have the meats, if you can count that as meat. Because I guess I don't totally know. I'm not completely sure if what Arby's is selling constitutes as real meat. I'm assuming that at least to some degree it does. But yes, they have the meats. Thank you so much for a super chat for that.
On to the other super chat.
Yeah, absolutely.
For Mr. Roboto.
This is a thing we should spend more time on at some point. But yeah, go ahead.
Is it time to stop making Superman movies? And my answer to that is a flat out no. We need more Superman movies of traditional Superman.
Yeah, no, this is the time we absolutely need to be making Superman movies, especially just for the sake of what am I trying to say? The integrity of the character, right?
Yep.
You have so many other characters that are out Supermaning Superman right now, and I can't have that, okay? I'm not okay with Luke Cage is better Superman than Superman, and Wonder Woman is a better Superman than Superman. She's not even a man! She's better Superman than Superman!
I think the fact that we're...
And Black Panther is better Superman than Superman. We have like
he's a panther. He's not even a man.
He's not even a man! Well, he is. But Marvel has made 2 Supermans that are better than Superman that aren't Superman. And it just really bothers me.
I think more from the fact that society as a whole is super cynical now. I just want something like I want Superman specifically to come in and be that shining beacon of hope on the big screen. Even when all these other characters like Black Panther and like Wonder Woman have done this same thing. I just want Superman to be on screen and show people that, hey, hopeful, truth, justice in the American way, Superman, traditional Superman can be cool. We don't need super cynical Superman.
I have huge issues with the Supergirl TV show and lost interest and stopped watching it. That gets Superman better than DCEU did. But it at least has a character named Superman that's like actual Superman. So like that's good. But really, we got it on TV in a show that wasn't even supposed to do Superman in a way like when we can't do it on the big screen. That's madness.
So to put a little bow on it, now is not the time to stop making Superman movies. It's the time to stop making bad Superman movies.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've talked about this before. Can we finally do it, and should we finally do it with Cavill? That's tough because you're always going to have that baggage, but I think he deserves to get to finally, play that character right.
I agree.
I do, but and then I mean, even Captain America obviously has a lot in common with Superman. Is a better Superman than Superman. No, they've got 3, don't they? Marvel has 3.
Yeah, it's not fair. Marvel is beating DC to the Superman question by 3.
And then my worry is when we finally get it right, it might feel like a ripoff of movies that were inspired by, of characters that were inspired by Superman, right? Like,
well, we finally do it, keeping on and just be like, no, he didn't rip off them. They ripped off him.
Yeah, sure, but what I'm saying is it could feel superfluous. It's like no, you had your chance and you blew it.
Yeah, and that's what I'm worried about. Is I feel like the DCEU with the current cast and with Cavill has they've kind of jumped the shark and they can't go back to just doing the traditional Superman without it feeling like, well, why would you do this with him now? Why not just go ahead and reboot it and kind of get away from all that?
I wish we'd take Hulk with Superman and give him his own show. I said it. I do. I wish we'd do that with maybe a different staff and, try to be a little bit smarter about it and less pandery about stuff. But that's what I'd like to see. Because we got one guy who actually, feels like Superman, and unfortunately Cavill's is not that.
Which is a
it's
shame.
It's not Cavill's fault.
No, he'd make a great Superman. I think
he would. I think he maybe has the chops for it.
If they ever decide to cast him as Superman, I think they've got the right casting choice right there.
Guys, that's going to be it for us. Thanks a lot for watching. We sure appreciate it. We should be back with you next Wednesday afternoon again at 3 o'clock. Barring any insanity on my end. We've got one more super chat, so let's go ahead and answer that real quick before we go. Fidelio
Okay, he says Wonder Woman 2, then Flashpoint type story to explain new Batman and soft reboot. Give George Miller Man of Steel 2 and David Fincher Batman.
Sure. I mean, there's a million different ways you can do it. They keep going back on Flashpoint, back and forth on that. I don't even know if that's happening now. I keep reading conflicting reports on that, Danny, where it's like sometimes it seems like they're going back to just a traditional Flash movie, and sometimes it seems like they're actually making Flashpoint. We're making too much of an assumption about the Flashpoint thing that the point of that would be to reboot the universe. I don't think you can make that assumption.
No, I think they just call it Flashpoint and do some kind of story with time travel just so they can use the name recognition of Flashpoint.
But I mean, they could use it for that. I honestly don't think that's going to happen. I think moving forward, especially if Aquaman is really successful, especially if people like Shazam, I think moving forward, they're just going to ignore the stuff that didn't work and keep the stuff that they think did. And we're just going to pretend like Superman is actually Superman. I mean, that's the long and short of it.
Speaking of Shazam, it would be really, really disappointing if that's the first DCEU character to feel like Superman in this
right?
movie.
But he's going to feel like a child in a man's body. That's going to be the point of that movie.
I would hope so.
I feel like they're advertising it that way because so far, all of the posters and things that we're seeing with him, all the pictures of him, he's like drinking a big gulp or something. Have you noticed that? Like,
yeah, and the newest post
is he going to be drinking out of a straw that entire movie?
Did you see the new picture that got posted today where it's him like the 6-pack of like cola and it just says cola on it?
Mm-hmm.
And he's standing next to someone. I think it's supposed to be his friend when he's Billy Batson. I'm not keeping up with the casting very much, but I'm
not either. But that was the assumption I made. Yeah.
Yeah. It looks really good. I really hope that they do go the kid in the man's body.
Well, and he's the exact right actor for that. I've always been a fan of him. I was a big Chuck guy, and I'm actually really excited about that movie. I think it could be great.
Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic, but I don't want to.
I'm more excited about their just like straight up solo like random one-off superhero movies, which I guess is mostly what they're doing now. But I'm excited about those because it seems like when they do that, they just let people run off and make a movie. And the fact that we haven't heard too much about Shazam makes me really hopeful for it because I don't think that the studio is that concerned with it. And like nobody knows anything about that character. They can kind of do whatever they want to. And just the fact that they greenlit that at all, it's hard to imagine too much mandate with it. I mean, they didn't have too much mandate with Wonder Woman, and that's a character that people have heard of and would pretend is more popular than she is. She's finally getting there, but I think for a long time, and Wonder Woman fans, like, I get it. She's part of the Trinity, and she should be bigger than she is. But I feel like Warner's has had a tendency to act like she's as popular as Batman and Superman. It's just not true. And she's finally starting to kind of get that notoriety. But even with her, they weren't that concerned about it.
Yeah,
finally just let someone make a movie. They didn't do that with Suicide Squad because Harley Quinn is huge.
Yeah, and with Shazam, it really does feel like no news is good news. Because it's not very hard for me to stay away from news about Shazam because I feel like I'd have to go out and look for stuff about Shazam. Like I looked for the set photos. Oh wow, another super chat. People are donating to keep us here. Yeah, that's hilarious. We've never had this happen. I was wrapping up. Dave Adkins asked, buying Sonic Mania plus upgrade. Also played Forces.
I did play Sonic Forces. I'll answer that first. I meant to review it and I forgot about it. That was such a nothing experience for me. I completely forgot to talk about it. Have you looked at that game, Danny? It's weird.
No, I'm not much of a Sonic guy, honestly, so I don't really follow the games all that much.
Oh, okay. Well, Danny's no fun. But
I'm Killjoy.
I'm just kidding. Sonic Forces. Well, I'm not saying you're no fun because you're not paying attention to those Sonic games. Because honestly, in my mind, who cares? But I went ahead and tried it on a whim, and that game wants to be like 5 different games, and it has a huge identity crisis, and it cannot decide what it is. That was my biggest issue with it. I thought it needed more time. And those games have had that problem. Like, I think it needed to come out another few months later, and they needed to work some kinks out of it. First boss battle, I had camera issues and stuff and could not figure out what I was doing, and really hated that. There's ideas with that game that I like a lot. I thought the customizing your own character thing was a cool idea, and it was kind of fun to do. But it's not as good as Colors, which is the last 3D Sonic game that I liked. And that game has a lot of 2D in it, which is part of what kind of helped for me. But anyway, yeah, I couldn't get into that game. I played it for a couple hours and quit. And then, yeah, I'm going to get the Sonic Mania upgrade. I kind of hate buying the same game again, but at least it's at that initial $30 price point again, as far as I know. And I have to have it on physical media, which is what I wanted in the first place. So at least they're doing that. And it'll be nice to have it on a couple of different platforms, I guess, because I can buy it on my Switch and take it with me. So that'll be nice. But, yeah, so that's what I think about that. Well, we're going to go ahead and get going. I hope that people don't keep throwing money at us to keep the show rolling. I've got to get going. But you guys are wonderful. Thanks so much. We really appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun, and we will see you again next Wednesday. That's it. So thanks again. I am Captain Logan.
And I am Danny.
Bye, everybody.